Hi, welcome to Community Conversations. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Riley O'Connell. I'm the Executive Director at Soul Friends, and we're going to get into it in a minute, what we do. I also want to start off by thanking WPAA for making this conversation possible. It really helps nonprofits like us really educate the community about what we do and how we can help what we do. So I'm very happy tonight to be joined by one of my colleagues, one of our great social workers, Mary Ellen, and one of her great therapy animals, Oreo. So Mary Ellen, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got to work with Oreo, how Oreo got in the business of animal-assisted therapy?
Psychotherapy, yeah. Years ago, I went to school for social work with the aim of actually hoping to intern at Soul Friends. And I've had rabbits for years. Oreo and I have been partnering for 3 years. Oreo will turn 3 right around the beginning of May. I kind of searched her out for personality.
Definitely seems like she likes being with people very much based on
she's very
based on her response right now.
Yeah, she'll actually go up next to clients and sit next to them. Rabbits are the third most popular pet in the USA and Europe. You know, we inform clients about how rabbits behave because it's very different than humans or predators such as dogs or cats, which are usually the pets that people know, but tried to train her to be very socialized. And if it wasn't her thing, then I wouldn't have pushed her into it. But she is very people-oriented, very human-oriented. Rabbits are social animals, and I do have a couple of other therapy bunnies.
I always refer to you as our bunny guru. Because you've been really a champion of the bunny side of the animal-assisted therapy that we do at Soul Friends. And one of the reasons I really am glad that we got to start with your and Oreo's story is the fact that I think you guys are a great example of exactly the types of people-animal relationships that make the work we do possible. So obviously, at Soul Friends, we've been an organization, a nonprofit here in Wallingford for 22 years now.
Yeah, 2003.
That's right, going on 23 years. I became executive director this past year, having been a volunteer with Soul Friends for quite some time. But we've been serving the community for a long time. We've since served over 10,000 families, individuals. We specialize in helping children, helping build familial relationships, working with veterans, first responders, and their families. And what you and Oreo really represent, as far as I'm concerned, is the impact those relationships and those therapy animal trainings can have. So in addition, of course, to the bunnies, which is your specialty that the kids really love, we also work with therapy horses out of our barns in Cheshire mainly, and also in other barns across Connecticut like Northford and Wolcott. I got involved with Soul Friends originally, as you know, with my therapy dog, Bruno, volunteering at the schools, which we're very happy to still be doing today. We do a lot of work in Wallingford Public Schools, and we love getting to work with those student groups. And we have other therapy animals like we've had therapy guinea pigs. In the past, we've had therapy cats. I don't think I have any clothes now that aren't covered in dog, horse, or rabbit fur at this point, which is totally fine with me. I think people don't necessarily know the difference between a private practice and a nonprofit practice like what we have. Because that plays a role in what that wait list looks like. And I think it's helpful for people to know. So the essential difference is whether you're mission or profit-based, right? And neither is necessarily a bad thing. But for instance, our mission is to, serve as many people in the community as we can, the Connecticut-wide community.
We cast a wider net. We don't always have all the facilities available.
We get creative. And that's why I'm lucky that we have such a great staff, yourself included, to make the most out of the resources we have. In addition to serve as many people as possible, we specifically try to serve the underserved communities, right? So most of our clients are on Husky insurance.
Something like 50% or something maybe?
A little over now.
Oh, wow,
So the public option for healthcare. Some clients don't have any healthcare, and we meet them all the same. We work a lot with DCF, Department of Children and Families. We work with kids that emotional regulation challenge up in the juvenile justice system, right? So there's all sorts of different people that we get to serve, and it's an honor to serve.
Oh, absolutely.
That other practices don't. And that leads me to one of the really important things I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about today, which is, the other question I get from people is, well, how can we help you continue to do the work you're doing or expand it? The main answer is, spread the word about the importance of animal-assisted therapy or therapy in general, even if it's not through us. Just I think that breaking that stigma is always super impactful.
That's important.
And I think we've made a lot of progress in recent decades, right?
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Probably especially in the last, I'm going to even say 5 years, there is a bigger mental health challenge now. I think, as you were saying, some of the stigma has gone away, but we've also had COVID. We've had, there's a shortage of social workers and other therapists, too.
Like I think you said, we've taken that next step in recent years to acknowledging the need, which important timing because the need has expanded.
Yes.
But then so the challenge becomes meeting that need, and that's really where we rely on support from the community. We work a lot with our other nonprofit partners. I mean, using WPAA is a great example, right? For being able to spread the word of the kind of work we do. Other nonprofit partners where we really work together to try to build up those resources, and ultimately, it comes down to finances, right? To the extent that if people want to support us, whether they want to volunteer for us, that's great as well, or donate to us, they can always go to our website, soul-friends.org. It allows us to continue treating folks who otherwise would be left behind.
Yes.
And I think that's, again, this work is super rewarding, but that's also the emotional challenge of rising to that demand. You really started from the ground up here at Soul Friends as an intern, and now becoming, one of our really experienced social workers, especially when it comes to bunnies. Can you describe a little bit about why it's so important to have that animal aspect of the therapy, right? So there's always a need for therapy, especially nowadays, everywhere, not just in Wallingford or in Connecticut, but all over the country. I find that there's certain outcomes we can accomplish and certain people, children especially sometimes, that we can reach through the animals, with the animals. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I've heard people say that working with the animals is like a last resort because people have brought their kids to other types of therapists, and not that there's anything wrong with them, but sometimes the situation is a child might not trust a therapist, or an adult is probably the better word. Something was done to them by an adult. But if there's a dog, bunny, cat,
it's that non-judgmental,
right?
Living thing, right?
Right.
We do our best in our positions to not judge, regardless of who comes in our doors. But an animal, more than we ever could, truly personifies that. I've seen clients come in who, in one case, was selectively mute. So that meant they weren't capable, or they couldn't communicate with people. The first time I ever heard them speak, almost a full-blown conversation with one of our therapy dogs. And so that's an example, I think, of what you're kind of alluding to, is that it provides that breakthrough sometimes, that icebreaker to people who otherwise might not have that opportunity. And it's not just children, it's, all sorts of people.
Oh, yeah. A therapist, he also kind of wrote I call it the Bible of animal-assisted therapy. His name's Aubrey Fine, and he calls animals a social lubricant.
That's a great way to describe it. Yeah,
I love that expression. Any interaction you have with them, it's non-judgmental. They're not saying, "Oh, I hate that outfit," or or "Your hair's all messed up," or They just approach you for you. They kind of feel you out. So I internship with Soul Friends, and I've worked with dogs, not my own, but I've worked with horses, more indirectly because that's not my forte, but I have different experiences through Soul Friends. One thing I've learned, like with the horses, for example, they'll come up to you and kind of know how to approach you.
They're incredibly emotionally intelligent animals.
They're perceptive. Kate, who's the founder of Soul Friends, Kate Nickel, she says that they can hear your heartbeat from 6 feet away, which blows my mind still. Right. I wonder if these guys can. We
did our most recent Reading with Rabbits that you organized at the Wallingford Public Library, which was a whole lot of fun. We loved doing it. The premise, for those unfamiliar with the program, is we have kids who are just usually early on in their stages of learning how to read, come in, and again, it's that unbiased relationship where they can read to the animal. We've done it with dogs and rabbits, I think I have found have been the best. And I think they really are attentive to it. You can tell when they point their ear, at the reader. They're a captive audience, but they're an audience, like you said, the ones that therapy rabbits you bring along enjoy doing it, or they wouldn't be there.
Right, right. Yeah, I wouldn't bring a rabbit that terrified of the situation.
Right, and that's a really important
yeah.
aspect that I think I want to dive into a bit more, because I don't know
Yeah.
that, we're so steeped now in animal therapy or animal assisted therapy, ourselves, that we sometimes forget that folks might not know kind of what defines a therapy animal. So of course, especially it gets confusing with dogs, right? Because you have service dogs and you have emotional support dogs, which are entirely different categories.
Right.
For people's awareness, for therapy animals, the main, they're not obedient to the point of being service dogs,
Right.
but they are trained, and most importantly, we're testing for an affinity for the work, right? So
Right.
that they're not just comfortable being around people and working with people through emotional challenges, but that they like doing it. Bruno, my therapy dog's favorite part of the day, when we get to go into the schools or do a session with a client. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you kind of gauged your bunnies in terms of how they're feeling and how they enjoy certain aspects of the work?
Okay, well, there's Pet Partners, which is the foremost organization that tests for temperament. I used to work in nursing homes, so I learned a lot just through experience.
Oh, I'm sure that's an invaluable
Yeah.
background to have going into
Yeah.
this work.
I've had rabbits for actually 25 years,
Wow.
I believe. Okay, there are rabbits that are just afraid of everything, and that's okay. That's who they are. There's some that come up to you for food, but it's funny if a stranger comes in the house, it's a different story.
Sure.
In fact, this one wouldn't trust somebody that was bunny sitting until she bribed her with some carrots. But I don't think she was afraid. It was just a stranger
Sure,
in her
new
domain.
experience, right?
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head, right? That's such an
Yeah.
important part of the work we do is, and Kate coins this term, our founder, so I'll quote her, but we never use animals, we work with the animals.
Oh, right.
And so making sure that you're in tune with your animals, which, like I said, Marilyn, I was, you're a great example of. It's a really important part of the work, and especially,
Yeah.
all of our cases, all of our clients are different. Some might be working through grief, some might be working through trauma, some might be neuroatypical.
Oh, yeah.
We work with children, adults, elderly, veterans, it's a whole gambit.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why it's all the more important to emphasize, consent with these animals,
Oh, God,
mutual
yes.
respect. It's also it's part of the whole cycle of the process of working through these challenges.
One of my favorite expressions from Pet Partners is taking care of both ends of the leash. It's kind of a triad. When I write my therapy notes, I call them my therapy animal colleagues, and they're part of the team. If I say family or parent, they're part of the team too. But if somebody is having an off day or it's not working for the animal, I started switching off with different rabbits. So
Right.
it wasn't, and only limiting it to like a couple hours per day for a rabbit, just to give them the break. I don't know about dogs in the full sense.
Yeah, it's
because,
very similar, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they love doing the work, it's
Yeah.
like anything in excess
Yeah.
it can be a problem, right? Even if
Yeah.
it's something that the dog loves or is good for the dog.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. My dog Bruno, his specialty is we go in the Wallingford schools. And that's how he first
Oh,
got
yeah.
started. Wow, probably almost 4 years ago now. He's a high energy dog.
Oh,
for
yeah.
those that don't know him. But same for him. When you're that high energy, we can do usually max out 2 sessions, so 2 hours, maybe 2.5, in a
Yeah.
given day. What we don't want to see happen is we don't want to flip a switch where they all of a sudden no longer are enjoying the experience, right?
Right.
So it's all that, the moderation, like you said, is exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something called compliance. Sometimes you want people to comply with rules for whatever reason with something. If you're forcing the animal and they don't want to do it, or they're too stressed or whatever, then, as you said, it doesn't become enjoyable.
Right.
You lose something.
Yeah, and I think
everybody loses something.
And especially when you're working in therapy, right, where it's all
Yeah.
about emotional intelligence and picking up on those tiny details, with how anything's feeling emotionally. It sets a bad tone for the whole session too, right? Because
Right. Yeah.
I think clients and patients really pick up, especially when they're emotionally vulnerable, the emotions of everyone around them, including the animals. So that's why it's only a benefit for the programming if that's all, kept in mind, and we certainly
Right.
do. I do want to talk a little bit about, obviously the need for therapy has gone
yes.
up. And I always tell people this is the toughest part of my job is, every day we're getting calls or emails trying to get appointments for themselves or family members,
Right.
whatever it may be. And it can be, a pretty long wait list sometimes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think some people have difficulty taking that first step, and open themselves up to therapy. Certainly, I've been to therapy. I think most people I know open to therapy. We wouldn't be in this industry if we didn't think that there was anything wrong with going to therapy. But it's something that can truly be a benefit to anyone and everyone, regardless of what your situation is. The animal-assisted side of things can be especially rewarding, in my opinion, because you, like we talked about before, you have that non-biased, entity there, living thing there. But they can also help you, especially with certain patients, develop skills that would be harder to implement in a regular talk therapy. For example, with Bruno, we talk a lot about, picking up on his signs, like we were just talking about with the rabbits.
Oh, yeah.
If his tail's up versus down in our student sessions, how is he feeling? Those nonverbal emotional cues. Same with working on with our younger clients when we work in the elementary schools. Well, what does Brunswick do every day? Bruno is his school name. What does Bruno do every day? Well, he wakes up, goes for a walk, eats his breakfast, takes a bath however many times a month or a week. And building those routines as well is another really great skill that we can work with the animals and with the clients. And I think we punch above our weight for sure, especially
Definitely.
Being a nonprofit in this industry. But it's incredibly impactful. And so making sure that we can continue to do that for, like I said, we've served 10,000 families in the last 20 years. I want to serve 20,000 more over the next 10 years, right? Like that's what we have to keep striving for. And I think we're taking steps in that direction, but we really couldn't do it without the support that we get from the community and continue to get from the community.
For me, it's a dream job because I get to go to the schools. I get to go to all these different places in the community as well as at our office and see all different kinds of unique situations. In fact, all kinds of results. I started out with Soul Friends. Besides my internship, I volunteered in between. I was on the board. The mission really means that much to me. Even kids at the library, as you were saying, they open up.
Yeah.
One place I went, and I'm using these examples because that way I'm not betraying confidentiality on anyone.
These are all general.
There was a boy who was afraid of rabbits. Never saw one real one in his life. Never touched a real one. His father wouldn't even come in the room. Usually the parents will come in and sit with the kids. Well, the kid is reading, whatever the child is comfortable with. It's nice to have an adult just for safety and so forth. I held the rabbit this way, said you don't have to. I let him make all these choices. I tried to make him feel comfortable, safe. I said, you could just feel how soft the fur is here. He kind of went like that, but he did eventually touch it. He actually got his father to come in, and we both convinced him to do the same thing. And he just said, wow.
That's
experiences like that. But
they stick with you.
Yeah.
And so you get to see, especially working in the schools, these are pivotal developmental periods in these children's soon-to-be adults' lives.
Yeah.
And so you see the trajectory that they go on through, these weekly sessions or bi-weekly sessions, whatever it may be. And it's remarkable. Now, we don't do too much work with the general population of the schools, but we do a lot with, kids that might be suffering from chronic absenteeism, maybe have trouble with, especially in the younger groups, with emotional regulation, like we talked about. And you see how you build this momentum from the group therapy with the animals, and of course with the support of the school psychologists, that they get to places that I don't think they would have ever been able to get to without that intervention. The work that people like you and the rest of our staff do, it really warms my heart to hear that it's your dream job, and it shows.
Oh, it really is.
With the passion you put into it.
I've done lots of things over the years, but it really is a dream job.
No, it's incredible, and I think, importantly, it helps a lot of these clients reach their dreams eventually, right?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to catch up with the support that this kind of programming offers. Fortunate to be in these positions where we get to really, wake up every day. Don't get me wrong, it's an emotionally taxing job as I'm sure you've experienced, but it's just so rewarding. And so we're very fortunate that we get to do this work. If you want to support the work that Soul Friends does here in Wallingford, in your neighboring towns and really across the state, please go to our website. We're always looking for additional therapy animal teams as volunteers. So if you have a dog that you'd think would be a great therapy animal, or even a therapy cat, guinea pigs, you name it, rabbits, of course, let us know. And obviously, to the extent that you can support us financially, it means a lot too. I always say that for every dollar you invest in nonprofits, it usually returns fivefold, especially when it's based in your local community. Tenfold for us, because we're very fortunate that we get to work directly with Wallingford schools, members of the Wallingford community, and neighboring communities. Right? It's the fact that like I said, I keep saying we're lucky. We really are, that we get to work directly with the community that we're a part of.
Yes.
I went to these schools before I came back with my dog, and so getting to play that role, it's kind of a full circle moment for me in the same way that it sounds like it was for you.
You get a chance to give back. I actually even brought a bunny to my hometown to do the reading to rabbits thing, and it actually felt so good. And I actually saw grandchildren, people I went to school with. We do reach out further than just Wallingford.
Oh yeah, it's and again, it's a nonprofit. We're a research pushing institution, right? So
absolutely,
we're constantly trying to push this field and promote the important benefits of that animal-human bond that I think anyone who's had pets knows about, but really pushing that to the next level in terms of a healing, maturing process,
right?
And just a really great new avenue for therapy. So I really want to, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for all the work you do with us, but also for joining me, of course, in this conversation tonight. I have to thank, of course, Oreo, who was kind of the star of the show. That's a good sign when you can be the star of a show while half falling asleep during it.
Yeah.
Now, there he is. Now he's awake. My name is Riley O'Connell. We're Soul Friends. I really want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank WPAA for making this community conversation possible. And thanks for listening, and look forward to being here again sometime